Okay. All right. Oh, here we go. Let's see. Hi, Rick. Welcome, everybody. Yay. ICF Orange County's webinar today. Welcome, Amy, Julie Washington. Happy to have you guys here. It's just the top of the hour. We have Petra Russell with us today. We're super excited about this program. And great to see all you guys joining. Awesome. Rosie, welcome. Sherry, good to see you again. Maril, Lois, good to see you again. Kristen, yay, you guys, welcome back to our ICF Orange County webinars. We're so happy to have you here. All right, it's literally 11 o'clock, 11:01. So we're gonna wait one more minute for people to hop on, but we're not gonna have you guys wait too long because we appreciate you guys being prompt. So Petra's here with us today. Those of you who haven't been on Zoom before, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to put them in the Q&A box. I will monitor that, or in the chat box as well. Welcome, Regina. Good to have you here. Greta's here, our Director of Membership. Yay, Greta. Thanks for joining us today. Amy, happy to have you. Jean, this is fantastic, you guys. So happy to have you on this presentation today. Petra is too. Very happy to have all you guys here. Julie's here from Corn Ferry. Happy to have you, Julie. Maril, this is great. So I'm curious who the farthest away person is. Like, I'm in Sonoma, still California though. So I mean, that's far from Orange County, but still California. So as we wait this last 20 seconds, because Petra looks frozen. So, but as we wait, just throw where you guys are dialing in from or joining us from. Gregory Gaines, good to see you. Love that you're always here. Cincinnati, Ohio, nice. Auckland, seriously? Jeez, wow. Petra, worldwide here. You're international. Yeah, you're international. That's fantastic.
Fantastic.
Excellent. Thank you for, I think, what, you're staying up really late or joining us after dinner to join us today. So we appreciate that. Atlanta, Georgia, Regina. Moved here from SoCal last year. Yeah, I moved from SoCal to Southern Hemisphere, yes. All right, you guys, thank you for letting us know. You joined us from the future. I love that. Good, well, tell us what the winning lottery is for tomorrow. I need it. All right. Okay, you guys, so we're gonna kick it off. We're gonna get started. As people kind of roll in, then they can join us too. But today our guest is Petra Russell. She is actually one of our board members as well. And Petra is part of Marshall Goldsmith. I'm sure you've all heard of him. She's part of the, let me see, the 100 Coaches Pay It Forward program, which is unique to Marshall Goldsmith. And he has a firm belief in lifting up others and paying that forward. And so Petra's part of that 100 coaches. So excited to have her here. Thank you, Petra, very much for being here with us today. And we're going to talk about the Marshall Goldsmith model of coaching for behavior change and how to help successful leaders achieve positive, long-term, measurable change in behavior for themselves, their people, and their teams. Something all of us coaches want to help our clients do, right? So I love hearing it from the best in the business. And Petra's here with us to do that today. She's earned a Master of Design from the University of Design, Technology, and Economy in Germany. She's an accredited certified professional coach through IPEC, and of course ICF certified. She's an energy leadership master practitioner and certified emotional connection trainer. So this gal knows her stuff, you guys. So we are so happy to have her here. She's also a lead associate, which is leadership in energy and environmental design. And as I mentioned, one of our board members. So we are, again, thrilled. I am a firm believer and kind of just love Marshall Goldsmith and his philosophies. So I'm so happy to have Petra, you representing him today. And without any further ado, I am going to turn off my video and let Petra have full stage. All right. Oh, and I'm going to, if you're not muted, please mute. I'm not sure if anyone else is getting those dings, but I am. All right, Petra, you're up. Thank you.
Can you hear me well?
I can hear you.
Okay, perfect.
Yep, you're good.
Okay, I'm going to say a few words. Thank you all for participating today. It's an honor to present the material as part of this webinar today for the ICF Orange County chapter. And Marshall Goldsmith, as most of you know, is an iconic executive coach and author of many famed books. One of his most well-known titles is the What Got You There Won't Get You Here. And a few years ago, Marshall had a revelation, and that was that the people he admired most really shared their knowledge generously. And he wanted to do the same, in part also of recognizing he was about to actively part out of the coaching business per se, and really start building a legacy. And the beautiful thing about this 100 Coaches program is that it's really a group where he assembled the next generation leaders and vowed to share everything that he knows. And it's rare that you really come across someone as accomplished as Marshall is, and really get to benefit from all the experiences and the insights that he gathered over 30 years of executive coaching. And I'm very honored to be part of it. And the only requirement really that he has, or that he says, is for participation, that you find your own way to pay it forward, which is basically what I'm doing with this material today for you guys. So there are some things that you may find interesting to incorporate into your own coaching style. There are a couple of really cool insights in terms of how he goes about the Stakeholder Centered Leadership, which is really leadership development and behavioral change. And I'll go through a couple of things. There's probably more material than we will be able to cover in 1 hour. So if we get cut short a little bit, I'm happy to answer any questions later or via email. And Karen may be able to facilitate by putting some of the information in the chat box later. So I'm gonna, without further ado, just gonna go ahead and pick up the presentation here and share my screen with you all. Okay. Hold on. So Karen, I am trying to see. Here we are.
There you go. Good job, girl.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go over some of the goals today, which is the leader of the future will be different than the leader of the past. I'm going to touch on some historical leadership models that we're all very familiar with and how they differ from where we are today. Understand the basic framework of the Stakeholder Centered Leadership model. And I'm trying to get into a case study or an amazing application, as he is stating, with a company in the US where this model has been applied successfully. And then a couple of different details that pertain to the success and the sustainability of this particular approach. The history of leadership is typically what we know, and we're going back in time here, starting out with the leader in the cave, where we always have structured or had structures that were through superiority. So when we think about leader in the cave, we're thinking about superior strength, the connection to the leader that created a particular hierarchy in this particular tribe or group. The leader was tough than the other cave dwellers, and the leader had the ability, most importantly, to determine extreme rewards and punishment, which is really the life or death, the food or hunger, the territory, the mates. So there was a specific setup in this particular situation. Another good example of traditional leadership is the royalty, or what we understand as superior through blood or descendant from God, no commoners, a clear hierarchy based upon title. I guess you guys all understand, with this bend of the knee still, the connection with the ruler. And the king was superior to the knight. So again, there was a very clear setup in terms of who is the chief, who is the boss. Same goes for military. If you think about military scenarios, highly hierarchy established based upon rank. And we have, even in our modern corporations today, a lot of terminology that still actually goes into that direction. When you think about talking about employees on the front lines, we're talking about a company, which itself is a term actually that's from the military. So here's another very familiar setup in terms of how leadership is selected through superior authority. Next example is the church. Leadership through connection with God, leadership based upon position in the church. And then, of course, the Pope was always superior to everybody else and to every priest. Again, unquestionable, these setups. And when you look at the combination of royalty, military, and church, there was often a relationship across all these three groups. So you could call, the administer of extreme rewards and punishments, such as life or death, or inclusion or excommunication, advancement or dismissal. There was some extreme power that was really in the hands of such leaders. And again, these three areas typically had a strong interface, and people were oftentimes related and kept that, over long periods of time. The academic setup for leadership is traditionally through superior education and knowledge. Here's a hierarchy based upon selection and rank. And typically the professor is always regarded as the superior to the student. The guilds, this is going into skills and craftsmanship, something that was also, of course, established through superior skills. Here, the hierarchy was based upon selection by the master, and the master was always superior to the apprentice.
Hey, Petra?
Yes?
Do you mind at the top, you can go to view, and it'll be in do presenter mode, and then it'll actually take up the whole screen.
Okay.
Top left.
Yeah.
Wait. And it should be a presenter mode, not notes. We don't want that. Slide only.
Slide only.
Yeah.
Got it.
There we go. Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it.
On my end, it's still the same.
Thank you. Yeah, on your end, it's the same. You're the presenter, so that'll be better for the readers. Thank you.
Thing is now I can't see my button to actually move the slides.
It should be usually down at the bottom left. Are you using Google Slides? Oh no, you're using.
I'm having a keynote, but I'm.
Well, yeah, right there. That should be able to. There
so now when I hit play, then I have to hit pause, or this is.
All right, you know what, guys? We're gonna do this in the way that it will work for Petra. So why don't you go back to however you how you had it before, maybe, and that way we can proceed forward.
I would love to leave it this way for you. And
I unfortunately don't know Keynote. I use Google Slides for my stuff. So go back to how you had it. That way we can move forward. So sorry for the interruption.
Well, let's see if I can. Yeah. I guess this is where we were, right? So now we have the private companies, and typically leadership here was established through superior wealth and ownership, the hierarchy based upon selection by the owners, and the owner here was always superior to the manager. Just quick question, is this now sharing correctly, Karen?
Yes, you're perfect.
Okay, perfect.
Yep.
Public companies, very similar. The leadership through superior position as judged by the representatives of the owners. Hierarchy here based upon selection by the upper management who represents the owners. And the leader was superior to the manager again. The assumed realities of leadership in the past, and this is just a summary of some of the examples that we just went through, is the workforce was local, the culture was uniform, the technology changed slowly, And then leadership, again, was always top down. Differing opinions were discouraged, and the leader was the boss. So there were some unquestionable frameworks, and you not agreeing or differing in opinion could have some pretty severe consequences, particularly in some of the situations that we described in some of the examples here, where it was literally, applying a death sentence or cutting people off from their food supply. So the one consistent assumption with all of these examples is basically the leader is somehow superior to the people being led. And that is really where the global leader of the future is completely differentiating from. So what we have today in terms of leadership is really an approach that includes global thinking across cultural diversity. I know diversity and inclusion has become a huge topic. Technology savvy, building alliances and partnerships is key, and specifically in organizations where you're building influence. Encouraging differing opinions is another key part of creating inclusive cultures nowadays in organizations and corporations. Shared leadership, where the leader really acts more as a facilitator, and from the leader as a knower to the leader as a learner. So I think this really shows very dramatically how that whole idea of leadership from a traditional sense shifted into what we have today in global leadership. I'm going to bring in here something that Marshall refers to a lot, and this is a man who many of you probably know. He originally was born in Austria, in Vienna, Austria, and is a much admired writer, teacher, and management consultant, a business visionary, really. I don't know how many of you are familiar with his books. He obviously wrote a lot about management, and particularly the distinct responsibility that management has today. He also coined the word knowledge worker, which really means we have workforce development today where we as managers or leaders really work with different knowledge workers, and no longer have we the answers typically, but we have the ability to ask and include the talent that's in the room or at the table. Peter Drucker is, again, here quoted, "The leader of the past knew how to tell, the leader of the future will know how to ask." And I think this is something that many of you have probably experienced in various situations in your coaching career. It sounds simple. We still come across many situations every day where we realize this is a I tell you versus including the participants and make it interactive and actually show some genuine interest in what others have to add to the discussion. So again, very often something that leaders struggle with and really fall into the trap of getting pressure to feel they have to be the smartest in the room. It's really not so much about us knowing everything as leaders anymore. It's really the idea of how do we get everybody to contribute in a meaningful way and share the knowledge they have individually. Learning from great leaders, most important factor for success, for successful change is the client, not the coach. So we're going here a little bit into some pillars of the stakeholder centered leadership and behavioral change in leadership development. And the first point is something that is very dear to Marshall and something that he's written about quite a bit, which means the idea that we oftentimes as coaches, when we go into leadership coaching, have a lot of thought upon and concern, about ourselves. So Marshall is really bringing in a lot of examples in any of his trainings about how unimportant really it is that you as the coach are liked, for example, by your client, that you as the coach spend a ton of time with your client. It's really about the client and the way they set themselves up for success. Don't make coaching about your own ego is really something that he is repeating often. And it's, again, something very easy to say and sometimes very, very challenging in the situation. Particularly when things get critical and when there are some hard questions, we sometimes really get into, it's all about, how I show up and how knowledgeable I show up, and it really isn't. So if any of you have had scenarios like this, always remember it's really about the client, and it's not about us as coaches knowing everything in those situations. One thing that he keeps saying also oftentimes, if they don't care, don't waste your time. In other words, it is not about, and I said this before, it is not about how you are liked by your client and how much time you spend. The success with any of these programs is always dependent on the readiness of your client and, of course, the ability to really participate in a program and create change behavior for the long run. If you don't care, don't waste your time. That's another thing that he keeps saying a lot. And that's really work with people that you really feel is worth it for you. We sometimes come across situations where really our best intentions are just not enough to move the needle for someone. And it's oftentimes very helpful to realize that rather early than later on in the engagement. What one behavior change will make a significant positive difference for you is basically the first question that this particular program of Marshall Goldsmith starts out with. In other words, to really figure out what is it that I can make a difference with that will allow me to then affect the people around me in a positive way. Why will this change make a difference? So in other words, again, we're picking a behavior or an area that we feel is going to really move the needle for us and for the people that we lead. Repeat with your partner. This is going into really exchanging a couple of different ideas, and what he is oftentimes doing as an initial exercise here to figure out where do you like to start really working on is the idea of feed forward. Feed forward, I'm going to get a little bit more into this because it's a often used approach in organizational development when we think about the 360 feedback reports. Marshall is really someone that strongly recommends to work with feed forward versus feedback. And there's a couple of different things that I'm going to say about this. I would like to first explain to you a little bit of how this exercise works that he went through with us. And it was a really awesome experience. So it starts out by picking one behavior. And he says, always, there's one behavior you would like to change. And changing this behavior, again, should make a significant positive difference in the lives of the person wanting the change and the lives of the people that he's affecting. Describe this behavior to randomly select fellow participants. So this is another really interesting part of feed forward. Rather than feedback, where you really have typically a relationship of some sort to the person providing it, and sometimes, unsolicited, which is probably the worst part of feedback. This is really you actively selecting someone to give you some information, suggestions, or inspiration. I'm cautiously not using the word feedback here, on something that you would like to be better at going forward. And what's really interesting here too is with feed forward, the word forward says it already. We're really looking at the future. We're not really falling back on past behavior, which is what he's saying here, letting go of the past. Reminding people of past failures or mistakes really never gets you to a good place. So again, the idea with this whole exercise is to really move people to look forward and think about what they can do forward going better versus looking at the past that you really can't change. Listening to suggestions without judgment is another really important piece. So when you ask people about, and this can be as simple as, I want to be a better listener. So if you ask people what their idea is about you wanting to be a better listener, and you do this again in a one-on-one, and you select different people to have that conversation with, and then they come to you maybe with something that they would like a suggestion on. It's a back and forth, but listening to the suggestions without judgment is key here as well. So this exercise is not designed for you to get some suggestions and ideas and then go around and have an opinion about what you just heard. It's literally really listening to what someone says. It's their experience, it's their perspective, and it doesn't require you to feel or defend or to excuse yourself in any way, shape, or form. It's designed, again, to learn as much as you can, and then, of course, also to help as much as you can, because, again, if you're doing this with someone together, typically you have an opportunity then to say, okay, here are some suggestions and inspirations I have for an area that you picked for yourself. I am gonna go a little bit into the setup for this feed forward. And again, thanking the participant after listening carefully, asking the person what they would like to change. This is where the back and forth comes in, and then provide feed forward, typically 2-3 suggestions, and then say you're welcome if you were the one giving the suggestion, or simply just say thank you as if you're the one listening to those. The beautiful thing about feed forward is, again, that it is really more productive to help people learn to be right than to prove that they were wrong. In other words, negative feedback often becomes an exercise in let me prove you were wrong, and it tends to produce defensiveness on the part of the receiver, where feed forward never does. Feed forward is especially suited to successful people who like getting ideas that are aimed at helping them achieve their goals. In other words, they tend to resist sometimes negative judgment, and we all tend to accept feedback that is consistent with the way we see ourselves, rather than someone telling us, what their opinion is about something that has been less than successful. It's about really getting people in a place where they have a very positive self-image, and yet are opening up to suggestions that are really aimed, again, to lead them forward in a better and more effective way. Feed forward can also, and this is another benefit of this exercise, can come from someone, excuse me, or anyone who knows about the task but does not require personal experience. I think this is another very liberating part of feed forward versus typically feedback. You really don't have to have a past experience with this person or an enormous amount of rapport. It's really sharing some ideas and suggestions, and they're really task related and have nothing necessarily to do with the individual. It also is much more possible to take feed forward not personal. Feedback is oftentimes received as a personal attack for some people, and it's making the one giving the feedback as much uncomfortable oftentimes as the one receiving it. And so again, this is a process that I love, because it really gives the ability to just stay task related and not get into a defensive situation with the person receiving it. Also, feedback can reinforce personal stereotyping and negative self-fulfilling prophecies. Feed forward is really looking at possibility of change, and feedback can really sometimes, because it relates back to something that wasn't successful or was a mistake, can be really more the idea of there was failure, and it's not necessarily geared towards looking forward. it's more like we're looking at something, and with the stereotyping, it's the idea of this is just the way you are. We are really with Feed Forward much more oriented towards positive change for this particular individual. So when we come across the couple of points here again, ask, and this is the process, ask, which is how do I become. And there we can really fill in the blanks as much in the professional arena as we can at home. It's how do I become a better leader, a better team member, a better partner, a better husband, wife, a better father or mother. It's really the question, and pick one area that you feel is most significant. I always say when people come to me and say don't know what to pick, I always say try humility. Listening is the next step. So stop asking for input when people, meaning listening is really actively just listening. It is not about expressing your opinion or making excuses about what you hear. It's as simple as that. You just really are just supposed to listen to this. And then think about it. In other words, avoid speaking specifically when you get sometimes ideas or suggestions, when we're in a specific place and we're angry or we're frustrated, we tend to talk. In this case, we should really stop and think. And then also think. In other words, avoid punishing the messenger. It's sometimes we get hit up with something that we don't agree with, or in this particular moment, we don't know how to appreciate or embrace it. It's really just a simple thank you, and don't try to not really punish the messenger or punish the person that's trying to be helpful. Next step is respond. In other words, ask for ideas about the future. Feedback about the past is not really what you want in this moment. It's all about the future and not so much about looking backwards. And that's, again, why it's called Feed Forward. Involve keeps to successful behavior. Is key. Involve is key to successful behavior change. And that's the process, again, that we're getting into with the Stakeholder Centered Leadership. Involve means really setting yourself up with a support system, with people that have the ability to support you in this process. And involve is really for you to set a clear goal, to write down what that goal is, to publicly state the goal, to measure your success in goal achievement, and to, again, involve a support group to help you to achieve that goal. Change is really, of course, what we're looking at here. Marshall always takes a moment here and goes, can people change? Definitely. Will people change? Maybe. All of these approaches, of course, are not, a guarantee, and I will get a little bit into when some of these will not work or why they won't work. But the most critical piece here, and this is something we're going to get into a little bit more in detail, is the follow-up. The follow-up is key to making change last. And it is sticking with it, and it is the frequency that is most important over rather than the duration. So in other words, in anything that we do, when we get inspiration, we think, we respond, we involve, we follow up in a sense of, can this really be experienced, what I'm trying to do? So the involvement of the support group, the involvement of the stakeholder that I'm getting into is critical, and so is the follow-up. The follow-up is really going to help, and this is a very specific component of this program. It's designed for you to stay on track and to really consistently get the feed forward from people that you have previously selected to support you in this particular endeavor of becoming a better leader in whichever area that you picked here for yourself. This is another research that Marshall did with a couple of different leading experts in this field. And the outcome was, again, with respect to the follow-up, leadership is a contact sport. In other words, again, the frequency of your follow-ups are critical to any of these initiatives to become sustainable and long-term successful. I'm trying to see where we go back into. Here's the slide for the follow-up. So the research I mentioned, we had a couple of different scenarios, and this is just to show overall the effectiveness of the program for the leader and the effectiveness under several different circumstances. So what you see here in short is really the effectiveness of the program for the person without follow-up, and then the difference as we go along with little follow-up, with some follow-up, and with frequent follow-up. So very clearly to see here, change in leadership effectiveness will always depend on consistent periodic follow-up to be successful over the long term. I'm gonna pause here for a second, as Karen had advised me earlier. I don't see the chat box, but I will see if there are questions at this point and stop for a few minutes.
You're doing great. Thank you, Petra. And thank you for pausing. We haven't had any questions so far, but all of you out there, if you did have a question, now would be a fantastic time to raise your hand, to throw it in the question box, to throw it in the chat, wherever you want to put it. And we can ask Petra about that. And Petra, just curious myself, as we're stopping here on this growth here that we're seeing as far as the perceived change with frequent follow-up, which is really impressive. Are those numbers at the bottom, like, what do those represent? The -1, -2, -3, and the 0, 1, 2, 3. What do those represent?
They represent perceived change, and again, perception, is again, is a little bit of a it's actually harder to change perception than it is to change behavior. Can sometimes be said, right? And Marshall definitely has pointed that out. So sometimes when we have an idea of how someone is or how someone behaves, that has somewhat, cemented itself into our way of looking at this person, and we sometimes have a harder time realizing that there's actually improvement or there's something changed. So just because we know this person so well, or we've worked with them and we've had this experience, of how they react or how they respond in certain moments, doesn't necessarily always translate in really what's the real improvement. And again, with stakeholder centered leadership, it's about the frequent follow-up, and really, do people have the idea of, yes, something has changed here, right? I can see improvement. Yes. And so you go from -3 into +3, which is really a matter of measuring, that increase of perception in this actual change. Yeah,
that makes sense. It says a lot for the consistency, right? Because like, if you do it once or something, people might be like, yes, okay, I kind of sort of believe you that you care. But if you keep doing it, like you said, you change that perception, and that becomes the new belief. Very nice. Okay, so we do have a question here. So the first one's easy. I can actually answer that. Victor wanted to know, sorry, I thought it was Victoria. Victor wants to know if we'll get a copy of this link. So all of our webinars go on YouTube, our YouTube channel, you guys. You can kind of go there on your own. When Lenore sends out the survey and you complete that, you'll get your CCEU that you've earned for today. And I believe she also sends you the link with that. So that's how you can get that as well. But you can always just go to our YouTube channel. And then Petra, for you, we have from Sherry that it says here, it seems consistent periodic follow-up being the best would be like a dialogue, a back and forth interchange or exchange, instead of a one-way communication. So it sounds like she's saying with this kind of process, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sherry, it seems with this kind of process, the consistent follow-up, and that is a dialogue, right? The people are talking back and forth. It's not just kind of that traditional bosses doing all the talking
Right.
and
So
kind of telling you what's
beautiful.
up.
Yeah. Thank you
Yeah.
for bringing that up. So the stakeholders that are pre-selected in this process are really who you feel best support you in this cause. So in other words, it's not just your direct report. You can pick, 2-3 people, if you like, that you really feel, benefit from your effort, and you really can really impact with your improvement how they interact maybe with their team. So it's really a very specific selection that you make on the onset of this program. The biggest part is that you want to work with people who are, really enthusiastic about it and are really there to help you with this, and are really there to offer honest feedback to you. And I'm going to use the word feedback here, but honest feed forward. So important, yes, it is not just your direct report, it's not just your next manager, it's really the people that you feel are mostly affected by this particular behavior, and then of course specifically about you improving in this area.
Awesome, Petra, thank you. Yeah, and I think that was Sherry was highlighting. She said, "Got it, great, thank you." Yeah, highlighting the fact that it's a dialogue, right? It's not a one-way communication from leader to direct report. Awesome. Okay, I think
thing too is, with any inspiration, with any feed forward we receive, it's a gift, as we often hear. It's something to think about. It is not meant in a way that we have to follow every inspiration, every suggestion, but it's someone else's experience and perception that adds to something that we haven't seen, haven't heard yet, are not aware of sometimes, right? So it is always a gift getting it. It is not always, it's not always expected that you act on all of it, right? So you still will select, but it's always worth listening again, because you're getting something that you yourself cannot really see in that same way, right? It's someone else's very unique experience and perception of how you came across.
Yeah, very nice, very nice. We do have another kind of question here, not kind of question, an actual question. We have a question from Amy, and she just wants some clarity on how feed forward is different from feedback. What's the act? Maybe a concrete example would help. So what's the true difference between feed forward and feedback?
Well, let's just say you pick an area, right, in which you want to improve. So when you go through the steps here, it's really you pick an area, and then you pick somebody and say, hey, I mean, this is basically when I went through this exercise earlier. I would like to become, and I'm just going to keep it simple. I say, I want to be a better listener. At this point, it's not like you normally have particularly in organizations where people are presented with feedback in a traditional sense, either through a 360 feedback report or through their annual meeting or performance review. There's a relationship to the person, and there is this, okay, so let me give you some feedback. I have never seen anybody sitting down and going, oh, fun, I'm going to get some feedback. Feed forward is really you actively asking for inspiration and some suggestions in how you can become better at something moving forward. So the view is immediately away from what has happened in the past to what can happen in the future. Very, very, very big difference. The other one is, again, that you are not really taking this personal. It's very task related, and the person giving you the suggestions and the feed forward doesn't really need to know you at all. So that's another huge difference. The other way I would look at it too is people that are soliciting on their own some suggestions or feed forward and inspiration, they are in a completely different mindset in terms of accepting what they hear. If you offer someone, again, let me give you some feedback. That has never, in my experience, ever created some engaged and motivated discussion. It actually really produces oftentimes the opposite. And when you think about how many people are really well equipped to offer particularly critical feedback, it's oftentimes a combination of the person delivering it is uncomfortable and the person receiving it is uncomfortable. Where this particular situation takes that whole thing out of the equation and makes it actually an enjoyable process.
Awesome. Amy, I hope that helps. It sounds like, Petra, from what you're saying, like it's all about me taking control of kind of my own potential, right? So if you came to me and said that you wanted to be a better listener, that would be you seeking out a skill that you want to improve.
Exactly.
And no matter what I say, if we didn't know each other, if I just said, oh, okay, well, when I feel like someone is listening well to me, they make great eye contact, or they summarize what I say, then you take that feed forward and you go use it in your life. Is that kind of how we're explaining it? That makes
sense. And I want to say too here, I mean, when you look at organizational work and leadership development, the stakeholder centered leadership model does begin with, very specifically, maybe it's a traditional 360 where some areas are highlighted based on perception of, your direct reports and other managers. So yes, there will be some highlights in areas that will give you ideas in terms of which areas would be maybe most important to look at. And oftentimes when you make the decision which area you want to pick, you want to make sure that this is an area that really has the biggest impact, right? For you and for the people that you lead. So in that sense, there is some prerequisite in terms of how to pick that area. It's not totally random and you just go, oh, I just want to be a better storyteller. That may not be something that really has the biggest impact at that moment in your organization, for example. But once you've picked that area, it's definitely an approach that comes from you. And I think, again, it's this you actively really wanting to improve and seeking to change behavior. And the follow-up and the conversation is really that part that makes this so effective.
Yeah, nice. Love it. Yeah, love it. And I think we have another question I'm going to ask you. And just to wrap up that point, I think you're right. And sometimes people get nervous about asking for help because they feel like they have to know everything. But that's what vulnerability is. And that's a great example of it,
Yes.
And that's what, if you haven't seen Brene Brown's talk on it, get on Netflix, people. It's a good one, right?
Yes.
Okay, this is just a confirmation question that the YouTube channel is ICF Orange County. Yes, it is, Sherry. Yep, absolutely. Just go on YouTube, type in ICF Orange County.
So in the sake of time, I'm going to go through some of these a little faster. I'm not going to go through the Roman numeral watch case study because I don't think it's that important. If someone has a question, again, up to this point, feel free to forward those. But I want to just talk a little bit more about some things that are critical here to know. Stakeholder-centered leadership development doesn't work, and I think this is probably key here already and came out in the conversation. If people don't want to change, there's nothing you can do about it. It has to come from within. And I think we all know this as great coaches. And again, something I said earlier on, it's not about how we show up and how great we are and how much this person likes us or how much time we spend with this coachee. Those are some terrible metrics. The idea is really this person wants to change. And that's when these things become very, very effective. Another thing that some of you may have come across is the written off scenario. So sometimes efforts are being made by organizations for people and really it's not done with all sincerity. In other words, there is a potential exit already and they are written off. At that point, this is not going to be, worth your while. Lacks business or technical knowledge. I mean, those are things that this is not designed for skill and competency improvement. This is behavior change, and that's where this is effective. Wrong strategy or direction. This is with every initiative. There needs to be fundamentally an underlying strategy, a culture, and overall direction that's going to support this particular effort. If that's not in place, obviously, this will not be sustainable. Same goes for integrity or ethics violations. People have hidden agendas. People are, not really standing in front of you transparently. And then, of course, you have sometimes people that are simply in the wrong job or the wrong company. None of these situations will likely lend themselves to a successful, leadership development engagement. This is step by step again, just to make clear how the sequence of events is figured out. Key stakeholders are obviously the ones that you select at the onset of this program, and they really are there to help you and support you throughout this change behavior initiative that you're on. It is definitely designed for you to check back often, but what you want to make sure of is that you don't get into conversations with any of these supportive stakeholders into past, again, what we said, failures and mistakes. So it's important, to stay as a recruit for the program. It's important for those to stay in the present moment with an eye towards the future, to be positive and supportive throughout this process, yet be honest about what they observe and really tell the truth in that sense. And then it's a two-way improvement. Again, it's a give and take. It's a listen and learn. So in that sense, you definitely want to have a good conversation with the people that you get involved, because not only do they have to stay the course with you, but they also have to really be in a place where they can support you in that way. Again, here the idea is to collect that feedback, to analyze results, and then have the person respond to key stakeholders. Provide ongoing suggestions, do the follow-up, and then conduct a mini survey to measure change. That's very easy to do when you have your area picked out and you have a way of really assessing where you're at, and this is very important too. So when you start with any program such as the Stakeholder Centered Leadership Development and many others, you really want to be clear on where you start out. And be very clear about where you put that pin in the map. And it's I am here, not where I wish to be, not where I one day hope to be or think I should be. Very important with all of this is really that on the onset, we're very specific about where we are and really start at that point. At that point, you can then measure as you go forward where your improvements are. And that's when you can really measure change. So we always have to be sure about what are we actually measuring? What's the area that we're really honing in on? Where are we at? Really, where are we at the beginning? And then measure in increments, where are we going? And again, a couple of things that come together here, and that Marshall, together with other leaders in this field, has really honed in on as he created the SLC approach, is leadership is really working with and through others to achieve objectives. And with and through are really two very important keywords here. Going back to the idea here too, and I'm touching on this quickly, what the idea was about leadership in the past, and all of that really plays a big role in understanding the overall idea of this concept and why it is effective. Again, the old assumption, leader is the provider of knowledge, that is the hardest for anybody that's really done a tremendous accomplishment, a tremendous achievement in their career. There is pressure to know, and really the new way to go is it is completely comfortable not to know. It's okay not to know, and to really, be able to find the knowledge within your, team, within your organization. And I hope we have enough time to get through the particular exercise the particular example that I was looking for Alan Mulally. So Alan Mulally was one of Marshall's most famous CEOs that he coached at an extremely interesting time when Ford turned around from a near collapse. And what was one of the most amazing things here with Alan was that he not only created a completely new approach to leadership and his leadership team, but he also really pushed people to start to really clearly state where they're at and to really be comfortable not knowing. And there's a beautiful example. I'm going to touch on this real quick here because I know we're coming up to the hour with the red, yellow, and green. He really had people in his leadership team at every meeting at the onset determine where they're at with their project, where green was I'm on target, yellow was, you know, I'm kind of behind, and red was like I don't have a clue how to get there and I'm definitely not on target. And it was interesting how he was able to really get people to finally open up and move from everything is okay and then leaving the meeting and trying to scramble to it's not okay and I don't have a clue how to get there. And that's a major shift in people's leadership thinking, and it's a major shift in how do we really cultivate and benefit from the collective knowledge that we have in our environment in a small organization as much as a large one. I'm not sure, Karen, time-wise how we need to wrap up here, because I'm noticing that we're probably either having some more questions or having too much material to cover here. So I'm trying to just stop and hear from you how to best do this at this juncture.
That's I appreciate that. Thank you. I think that's a good call. We're coming on 11:57 here. So what do you think, you guys out there? Is there any last questions for Petra regarding the case study with Alan, regarding Feed Forward, regarding the coach as a facilitator? Any last thoughts that would be here as we're getting ready to kind of wrap up? I'll give you kind of a couple seconds here. If there's no questions, then Petra, you'll have about 1 minute to kind of drive home any final thoughts. But as you guys are kind of getting ready to type those in, for those of you in the Orange County area, know that we have on October 24th our live chapter meeting, and that is actually going to be held at a new location rather than our traditional one. And we are going to send out an email to let you guys know where it is. And also, I need those of you who are on the phone and dialing in. We don't have your names, so we can't send you your CCEU. So we need you to either type your full name in here right now, in the chat will work. For those of you who have signed up with a single name, like Amy, or I think you may be one, we need you to type that in as well. Okay, so we can get you guys the survey. Once you complete the survey, then you get your CCEU. Okay, some comment here. Seems like a really thorough program. Love to learn more. Thank you very much, Petra. So
yeah, we didn't get to one point. Like I said, I'm happy if anybody has questions, to get to that individually. And again, I was kind of feeling this material was a bit much for 1 hour.
You did good. You did good.
Yeah.
All right, hold on 1 second here. We've got, thanks, great session. Would it be possible to get further resources and learning on this? Mm-hmm. Petra, how can people find you? What's your email?
Oh,
probably the best way.
Just put, should I? Can you
I can type it. Yep, it'll be in the chat, you guys. I'm going to put it right now. All right, what's the email?
Petra, Petra.
Okay.
@ parishpartners.com.
2 R's?
PARR, yeah, parishpartners.com.
Okay, you guys, there you have it. You have Petra's email address. Will you have access to deck? Well, you have access to the YouTube channel. You won't have actual access to Petra's slides unless she chooses to email them to you if you ask her individually, but you will have access to the YouTube presentation. Okay, thanks for the presentation. This wasn't what I expected, but appreciated your time and gained a better understanding of stakeholder-centered leadership. I'm looking forward to catching you next time. Us too. Okay, Rosie, I think I just answered you on the slides. You'll have to get in touch with Petra personally if you'd like to do that. We will put it on the YouTube channel. Final thought, Petra, anything you want to have us part with?
What I really want to say is it's a more interactive presentation. Usually there's some great exercises. I'll be happy to share more individually that I wasn't really able to share all in this 1 hour. It's a wonderful approach to leadership development, and I'll be happy to, again, provide more detail or more feedback for anybody that's interested in incorporating some of that into their own coaching style.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And as we wrap up, you don't need any password this time for the CCEU. And those of you in Orange County or visit Orange County on October 24th, we will have another one of our board members, Nanor. She will be presenting on StrengthsFinder. Those of you who missed or who have heard of, Gallup StrengthsFinders, that is becoming very prominent in the working world as well on how to lean into people's strengths. She will be presenting on October 24th. It begins at 6 o'clock. You can start some coffee and networking and meet other coaches. And then we'll go into the presentation probably a little bit after 6:30. We'll have some announcements and 6:45 kick it off. You will get an email because that location has changed. I'm not sure of actually where it will be since I'm in Sonoma, so I'm a little bit out of the loop on that one. We will get you guys that information. Mindy, yes, Petra did take a course. She was one of the 100 coaches who work with the Pay It Forward program with Marshall Goldsmith, and that's why we are so excited to have her here today. And we have one last question that can we have an extension of this webinar? Petra, that's up to you, and we'll let you think about it. We won't put you on the spot just yet, but it sounds like
we can totally look at this, and yes, absolutely, we can do a part 2 to this. Absolutely.
Excellent. All right, there you have it, folks. She'll be back.
And be happy to do it. Yes.
Excellent. She'll be back. She'll be back. Thanks, you guys. Thanks, everybody. Thank you very much, Petra, for your time. We really, really appreciate it. And all of you in Orange County, we love you guys. And Mindy appreciates your willingness to share, Petra. Yeah, love you guys. Have a great day out there, okay?
Thank you.
See you in a couple weeks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.